Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley with Haley Stitches, and today I'm going to show you how to make a super easy fat quarter quilt. This is a 16 patch quilt, and the best part is that it uses up almost the entire fat quarter, so there's almost no waste. You can get a copy of the free quilt pattern by clicking the link in the description below. All you have to do is enter your email address and I'll send it directly to your inbox. The quilt pattern has 4 different sizes, and today I'm going to show you how to make the small throw size. That size ends up being 48 inches square and uses 9 fat quarters. If you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like it, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot and it's completely free. Okay, let's get started. First, let's go over all the supplies we need for today's project. The fabric I'm using today is the Kismet fabric line by Sharon Holland. I'm using 9 fat quarters for this size quilt. We'll also need a cutting mat and a rotary cutter, a long ruler, and some matching thread. My favorite thread is Dove by Aurifil, and I'll have everything linked in the description below. I've had this fat quarter bundle for a very long time. I think I got it right when the fabric line came out, which I think was 2 years ago at this point. So I made it a mission to come up with a quilt design that used up these fat quarters. And because I hate having fabric waste, I try to use up all of it. So to get started, I am going to just pair up 2 fabrics, and each of these 16 patch blocks are going to be made up of contrasting fabric. So I chose this deep orange and then the white. So first I'm going to line up the edge to get a nice 90-degree angle to work with, and then I'm going to be cutting 4.5 inch strips from each of these fat quarters. And you'll cut all of your fat quarters this exact same way into 4 strips, and you'll see there's just that one little sliver of fabric left, which I love. After you cut all of your fat quarters, you're going to pair up 2 contrasting fabrics. So here in this example, I'm using the dark orange and the white, and you're going to line it up in an alternating pattern, dark, light, dark, light. Now it's time to sew the pieces together. So I'm going to sew the first 2 strips together, and then I'll sew the bottom 2. And then after those are pieced, I'm going to sew both sections together to get our block. And this is what it looks like after it's all sewn together. And for pressing, you can press in whatever direction you choose. Just press all of the seams in the same direction. And I love how fast this quilt comes together because you can chain piece this whole thing and it comes together super quickly. So I'm just going to square up that corner into a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to cut 4.5 inch strips from this block. So we cut the fat quarter into 4.5 inch strips, and now we're cutting this pieced block into 4.5 inch strips. And here's all the leftover fabric we'll have from the fat quarters. My editor made this quilt, and she used all those little leftover pieces to make a mini quilt for her dog, which I thought was just adorable. And now we're going to take those strips we just cut and lay them in an alternating pattern. So you'll start with the dark on the left side, and then the dark on the right side, dark on the left, and dark on the right. So you'll get this checkerboard pattern. And the last step for piecing this block together is we're going to piece it exactly the same way we did before. So I'm going to sew the top 2 together, then the bottom 2, and then after those are pieced, we'll piece the entire thing together with that center seam. As you're piecing these 16 patch blocks together, you'll notice that the seams nest, and that's because we pressed all the seams in the same direction. So when we start alternating the strips, one row is pressed to the right and one to the left, and that makes the seams butt up next to each other really nicely. By having the seams nest, it just makes it easier to get those nice intersections that are 90 degrees, and it'll just enhance that checkerboard effect when everything is lined up perfectly. If you want to press your seams open, that's totally fine, but I do recommend using pins just to make sure that those intersections are nice and crisp. This is what the pieced 16 patch block will look like, and you can press it in whatever direction you choose. I decided to press them open to kind of reduce the bulk because there's a lot of seams going on in the 16 patch block. And you can see how nicely these intersections line up, and that's all because of those nested seams as we were piecing the rows together. It gives such a great effect when those seams are able to be nested. Each pair of fat quarters will give you 2 identical blocks, but some of the sizes in this pattern call for odd numbers of fat quarters. So I'm going to show you how you can mix and match 3 fat quarters to get 3 blocks. In this video, I'm making the small throw size, which calls for 9 fat quarters to make 9 blocks. So for 3 of those fat quarters, you'll have to mix and match them all together to get 3 different blocks. So first I'm starting off with the yellow and then the moth fabric, and then I'm making a block out of the yellow and the paisley. And lastly, I'm making a block out of the paisley and the moth fabric. So just mix and match those 3 fat quarters to get 3 blocks. Now that we have all of our blocks pieced together, I'm going to show you how to assemble the quilt. So we're going to start with the first row, and we are going to lay our blocks out so that they follow the pattern dark, light, dark, light. and you'll just follow that pattern throughout the whole quilt, just making sure that the dark squares are lined up with the light squares. So I pieced this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can see the seams nested again, so it gives us those nice crisp angles, and you'll just continue that process all the way down the row. The quilt assembly instructions are exactly the same for each size quilt, so it doesn't matter what size you choose to make, you'll follow the same concepts. And here I just want to give you a close-up where you can see that those seams nest again. So that's a really important step at the beginning of this quilt, just making sure you're pressing everything to the same direction when you're sewing those strips together. Now I've sewn all of my rows together, so for the small throw size, it's a 3x3 grid, so you'll get a total of 9 16-patch blocks. And then we will just sew these rows together. So after we've sewn the rows together, we have to press some more seams, those intersections. So for the first row, you'll press to the right, second row to the left, and so on and so on. And that'll help our seams nest once again. And for these long strips, it can be helpful to pin. So I do recommend doing that if you just want to make sure that everything is lined up correctly. And this is what the final quilt looks like. I did not get a chance to quilt this quilt yet. I'm actually completely out of batting, and I think I might send this one to the long armor. I just love this fabric so much. I really would enjoy having some special quilting on it. I don't send my things out to long armors very often, but I do like to do it for some like special quilts every now and then as a little treat for myself. And you'll notice the center block is different than the rest of the blocks. That's because I actually used 10 fat quarters for this quilt because I wanted that center block to have something a little bit special and be different than the rest of the blocks. So there's definitely a lot of ways you can play with the fabric in this quilt. Remember, you can download the free pattern using the link in the description below. And I just want to insert here just kind of what the different sizes look like. So this free pattern has a baby size, a small throw size, a large throw, and a bed. And it ranges from 4 fat quarters all the way up to 25 fat quarters. So this is a great project to use up any fat quarters you have laying around. I'm so happy I finally turned these fabrics into a quilt, and I love how this one turned out. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love if you would subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next one. See you next time.